This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Stick around to the end of the video for a special offer they're making available through my channel. Very often people ask me, hey man, do you ever find yourself getting cynical and jaded about the games industry? I understand where that question comes from because the majority of gaming coverage and commentary is focused on large publishers, and those publishers are always going to disappoint you eventually. There's a pretty straight line from Diablo 1 to Diablo Immortal, from Warcraft 3 to Warcraft Reforged, from Fallout 3 to Fallout 76, from The Witcher 3 to Cyberpunk 2077, from Ghost Recon to Ghost Recon Frontline, from Final Fantasy 7 to whatever NFT bullshit Square Enix is cooking up at the moment. Point is, if you focus purely on the output of AAA publishers, you probably will find yourself cynical and jaded, because the AAA industry does give you plenty of reasons to feel that way. That's why over the last few years, I've invested more and more of my time into the indie scene, which for the last decade in particular, has provided this incredible wealth of innovation and emotional depth and fun, and it's done so at an average price of around $20 a title and with almost no in-game spending. I really do believe that increasingly indie titles represent this sort of palate cleanser when you find yourself overwhelmed by the worst excesses of the industry. So I would say to you that if you ever find yourself losing your love of video games, I'd recommend diving into some indie games. It sounds silly, but I do believe it's good for the soul. The challenge at the moment is that there are so many indies hitting Steam that it's hard to find them. Indie devs are almost as worried about game discoverability as they are about shipping their actual game, which has led to the rise of stuff like the Game Discover Co newsletter from Simon Carlis, which is a weekly newsletter that focuses exclusively on ways indie devs can increase the chances of their game being discovered. That's a fantastic read, by the way, even if you're not a developer, so I'll leave a link to that below. The other thing that this glut of indie titles has given rise to is the Steam Next Fest, Valve's admirable effort to focus the industry on what's coming up in the indie scene, to surface the best stuff, and to let people actually play it ahead of launch. The Next Fest offers up hundreds or thousands of demos every few months, as well as a front end allowing people to see the most played and most wishlisted titles. It's an absolutely fantastic, essential event on the gaming calendar at this point, and I don't think Valve gets enough credit for the work they put into this. I've covered Next Fest since it started last year. There's been 4 since then, I think. This has easily been the best one yet, to the point where I'm overwhelmed by how much good shit I played. I played 50 demos over the course of 5 days, and I really wanted to try and get this video down to a top 10 list, maybe top 15. Impossible. There's just too much good shit out there. That's why I'm covering 25 titles today, and while some of them are better than others, I promise you that none of them are filler, and every single one is a game I plan to play at release, time permitting. So, as per last year, here are the rules. For every single game I have on this list, I've linked the Steam page below. Can I kindly ask that if you like something here, then please go and wishlist it on Steam. Wishlisting is worth its weight in gold to an indie developer, because it's bankable interest in their title that they can use when they're negotiating with publishers. It positions them better in the Steam algorithm, and it also just leads to straight up sales. So wishlisting is really important. Please, if you can, that'd be great. Along with that, can I also ask you to share this video far and wide? Like I said last year, I don't care about the views. They're nice, but I get views regardless. What I really care about is helping indie devs sell more copies of their games. And if this video can help people do that, then I want as many people to see it as possible. All right, that's the intro done. Let's showcase some games. For years now, there have been rumors of a GoldenEye remake. In fact, there was an actual confirmed, finished GoldenEye remake out there that a bunch of developers made, but it couldn't be released due to licensing reasons. Crazy. One developer by the name of Replicant D6 finally had jack of it and was like, fine, I'll do it myself. Their new title is Agent 64, and yeah, it's absolutely GoldenEye, like 100% through and through. This is GoldenEye without the James Bond label. When I first saw this, I was like, sounds like a fun gimmick, but the more I played it, the more I was like, this is a proper video game. Its art design is simple homage to the 64 era, but it still looks detailed and interesting in its own low poly count, flat textured kind of way. Environments have a fair amount of destructibility, and enemy AI is surprisingly responsive. It'll definitely keep you on your toes. More than anything, the core gameplay holds up, and it was a reminder of why GoldenEye was so successful in the first place. It is all about that auto-aim, since your gun immediately magnetizes to anything you so much as glance at, but that doesn't make the whole thing mindless. It still requires smart positioning and choosing the right weapon and ammo management and all sorts of stuff. Outside of the I can't believe it's not GoldenEye gag, this was a legitimately fun, well-made demo, and I'm looking forward to the full release, which is slated for sometime this year. Okay, this next one, fucking sick. Much like Agent 64 gives us the GoldenEye remake we'll probably never get, Angerfoot gives us the Hotline Miami 3 that we'll almost certainly never get. Obviously, there are some differences here, not least of all the fact that this is first person as opposed to the top-down pixel art which Hotline Miami employed, but the DNA of these two titles is very, very much the same. You get obscure phone calls and faxes telling you to go places to kill people, and you speedrun your way through levels full of goons who will kill you in one hit and then dance on your corpse afterwards. Angerfoot isn't just 3D Hotline Miami though. The levels are longer and facilitate more of a flow state. The first-person perspective obscures your view, so you never know what awaits you in the next room, and allows you to explore space and discover hidden secrets and enemies in a way that Hotline Miami never facilitated. It's also got its own brand of weirdness, being really, really obsessed with feet. Do I think this is on track to eclipse one of the greatest indie titles ever made? No. But do I think this is going to be a cool title for speedrunners and foot fetishists? Yes, I do. It'll be out sometime next year. The deck builder subgenre is becoming increasingly entrenched ever since Slay the Spire basically birthed it all those years ago. There were quite a few deck builder demos playable this year during this Next Fest. I played a bunch, but I'm only shouting out 2 today, and this is one of them, Beneath Oresea. Obviously, the standout feature here are the visuals and the animations. This is typically a genre with fixed camera perspectives and static character models. This one just looks so beautiful in motion. These richly detailed characters, all beautifully animated and heroically framed by the dynamic camera. That's not the best part though. The best part is that you can actually create melee combos by playing your cards in quick succession. It doesn't provide any gameplay benefit, but it just looks so fucking cool to see your chosen warrior flow seamlessly from one strike to the next as you quickly lay down cards. Mechanically, I found this to be just as robust and deep as other deck builders I played, though its user experience does need some work since it doesn't do a great job of explaining itself. Hopefully that will come in later builds, but I really do feel like this is one of the more interesting, unique, and innovative deck builders we've seen in a while, so I've certainly got my eye on this one. It's from Broken Spear Incorporated, and it's out sometime this year. Cult of the Lamb probably doesn't need me to help hype it up since it's from Devolver Digital and they've been doing a pretty good job of getting the word out on this one. Having said that, I wasn't quite sure what this is when I booted up the demo last week. I was like, is this a dungeon crawler? Is it a roguelike? Is it demonic Animal Crossing? The answer is yes, to all of the above, and it's a combination that totally rules. You play as a little lamb resurrected by a powerful lamb god thing, and your Faustian bargain compels you to create a cult in the lamb's honor. That means traveling through procedurally generated levels, kicking ass, and freeing hostages so they can be indoctrinated into your cult, and then put to work back at the cult HQ. There you can build structures and farm materials and cook meals so your flock doesn't starve, and surely heaps of other stuff not available in the demo. It's simple farm sim stuff, but it was definitely working very well. The combat side of the game is fairly simple to this point, but the incredible presentation of each space and each new enemy really make up for it. The whole package is just bursting with S-tier presentation. From the crisply drawn pop-up book art to the music to absolutely everything. The whole package just pops for real, and it smacks of the quality that Devolver titles are known for. This one is out real soon, August 12th, and the good news is that this one is making its way to consoles as well. Most large publishers have stopped making linear single-player first-person shooters. It's all live service multiplayer stuff now, and so the indie scene has stepped up to deliver a range of different first-person shooter experiences, the most popular of which has been the boomer shooter. Now, there are different definitions for what that entails, but in broad terms, it just means very action-y focused shooters running on older engines or engines that are made to look old. I suspect some people will bristle at labeling Cultic a boomer shooter because as action-focused as it is, it's actually trying to do a lot more than that. There's a big focus on horror and tension here, not only owing to the simple stealth mechanics you can employ, but some of the encounter design which at one point traps you in a room full of dangling corpses, only for them to suddenly spring to life while a chainsaw-wielding maniac tries to prune your head from your body. This was a really, really great demo, owing to its distinctive art style, the interactivity of its world, the strong level design, the competence of its gunplay, and just a whole bunch of tiny details that really made this experience feel so immersive. I was really drawn in by this demo. I just wanted to keep going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, and I was very bummed when this demo was over. No release date for this one yet. Hopefully it's soon because I really want more. As I've said on many occasions, no sport benefits more from video gamification than golf, since it turns an inherently boring and insufferable experience into something actually fun. Following that rich tradition is Curse to Golf from Japanese-based Chuha Labs. You are a golf pro, and just as you're about to strike your last championship-winning swing, a bolt of lightning sends you to the afterlife, sort of. You're stuck in golf purgatory, and the only way to escape is to complete all 18 holes under par. Assisting you is the mysterious Scotsman. Mysterious because who knows what he has under that kilt. Your base of operations is the Eternity Pro Shop, I like that, and making the job easier are special activatable cards that can be used to do things like explode obstacles or stop the ball in midair or other physics-bending chicanery. This one was just so pleasant to play through because it's simple to get to grips with, but the more you played it, the more you realized how many clever ideas and mechanics are packed into it, as the course design and card system really complement each other. It doesn't hurt that it looks fantastic, and the soundtrack is really excellent. This one is headed to both PC and the Switch. I'll be playing it on my Steam Deck since it seems tailor-made for that. It's out Northern Summer this year. Quite a few shooters in this video today, drawing from a number of different shooting subgenres. This one, Deadlink, is actually a roguelike, and it was one of the more impressive shooters from a mechanics perspective. I literally wrote in my notes, like 5 minutes after I started playing it, quote, "Oh my god, this is fucking sick," end quote. Firstly, can we talk about the visual design? It's got this sort of cel-shaded, stark, saturated thing going on, which creates contrast so well with the gloomy cyberpunk cityscape you're fighting in. Most of the environments are fairly bleak looking, but for the neon signage and floodlights that punctuate them. The weapons also look awesome with great firing and reload animations, though the sound design is a little underwhelming at the moment and could do with a little more oomph. The star of the show is the ability sandbox, where your grapple, double jump, and dash all allow you to pull off some serious bullshit if you're skilled enough to string it all together. This is that cathartic release that games like Titanfall or Ghost Runner have in spades, where the joy of playing it isn't in completing the objective, but in creating these sick, uninterrupted combos that you just want to clip and send to your friends. Enemy design is varied and interesting, the roguelike stuff is well thought out and further spices up not only your foes, but also your own playstyle. The whole thing is just very, very promising, and I'm keen for the final product. No release date for this one yet. Okay, so when I'm cruising for demos, step one is to just download whatever I think looks interesting. And Dome Keeper did not look interesting to me. There was nothing about its presentation or what I saw of its gameplay that jumped out at me and made me want to click download on that demo button. Step two in my demo hunting process is to go on Reddit and Twitter and wherever else and look around, and pretty much everyone was like, Dome Keeper rules. And I'm like, all right, fair enough, I'll take a look. Having played it, let me now be the last to say, Dome Keeper absolutely rules. Of all the demos I played in this showcase, this was the one that impressed me the most in terms of its core gameplay, because its design is so watertight and so full of tension that you are just so engaged in every second that you're playing it. It's kind of like a tower defense game where you have to tunnel underneath to gather resources and then come back up to spend those resources to fend off waves of attacking monster things. But every part of it has been calibrated so precisely that you question every decision you make, because 1 or 2 seconds can often mean the difference between success and failure. This is the sort of puzzle experience that just tunnels its way into your brain, pun intended, and when you inevitably reach the failure state for a mission, you immediately want to get straight back in there so you can get it right the next time around. This one was one of my top 5 for the entire Next Fest, and has strong sleeper hit potential. Trust me on that, it's out sometime this year. One of the defining characteristics of the boomer shooter subgenre is that it's usually pretty stressful and dark and bloody, and it's a lot. So developer Mobeful Games have basically said, What if we did the opposite of all of that? Meet Fashion Police Squad. It's chilled out, it's bright, it's happy, and it is fabulous. As a member of the Fashion Police Squad, it's your job to bring fashion criminals to justice. Think dreary, ill-fitted suits, think garish spandex, and of course your arch nemesis, socks and sandals. The presentation is what carries the whole package, with a visual design that marries clean 3D environments with low-res pixel art to create something that feels both classic and modern at the same time. In terms of gameplay, it's unique because of how low stakes it is. Like I said, most boomer shooters are fast and your screen is flooded with enemies and you die in a split second. This has far fewer enemies, fewer mechanics, and it's a nice change of pace compared to what the rest of the genre typically has to offer. I'm sure the appeal of this one is a lot more niche than many of the other games on this list, but I think it's cool, and I'm glad someone's offering a different take on this subgenre. I'll be checking this out when it launches sometime later this year. Okay, so this next one is like top 3 for the whole showcase, for real. Here we go.
Hello?
The shorthand description for Ghost Song is Art House Metroid, but that's a description that the game's solo developer, Matt White, doesn't love. I spoke to him on Twitter and my opening line was like, "Dude, your game rules," and he was like, "Thanks." We got to chatting and he told me he made this game on his own and that it's his first game and that before that he was a comic book artist. So imagine never making a video game ever and then putting out one of the best demos for the entire Next Fest. Unbelievable. Anyway, coming back to Metroid, Matt says he understands the comparison, but he sees Ghost Song as different because, quote, "It's an open game where you aren't pushed in any particular direction, and there's a number of totally missable bosses, characters, items, etc." End quote. I got a little bit of that vibe as I was playing, as in the brief demo alone, I uncovered 1 or 2 secrets that did feel very optional and that rewarded my curiosity rather than my more base desire for the next power upgrade. But yeah, those Metroidvania style upgrades are still part of the experience, and the setup of a besuited woman shooting an arm-mounted blaster is naturally going to invite some comparisons to Nintendo's classic. For me, it was the tone of the game that rung out the loudest, very reminiscent of something like Nier Automata, where the ghosts of ancient technology exist in melancholic infinity, shuddering back to life momentarily as you arrive and then powering down as you depart. It feels sad and lonely and desperate, and that is totally my jam. This game looks beautiful, its enemy design is so interesting, the difficulty is tough but always fair, the soundscape is so haunting. There's nothing about this package I don't love, and it's another one of those instances where I'm floored by how much a single talented person can achieve. This one is called Ghost Song and it's out sometime this year. I want to do a very quick shout out to Gloomwood. Now, to be clear, I did not play this one during this Steam Next Fest, as I played and covered it last year, but it was one of the best demos back then, and I doubt that's changed a year later, so I want to circle back on it for completeness sake. This is absolutely something you should have on your radar, since it's a spiritual successor to Thief, and it's from a bunch of people involved with the classic label New Blood Interactive, you know, the team behind stuff like Dusk and Amid Evil and Ultra Kill. It's an immersive sim at a time when every single immersive sim studio is pivoting to make hero shooters, I guess. Anyway, Gloomwood is going to be cool when it arrives. We have no idea when that is. Hopefully it's soon.
Francisco, Leon, get ready.
For how successful the Fire Emblem series is, it's funny that no one has really tried to recreate that formula and make it playable outside of Nintendo's walled garden. Enter Lost Eidolons, which is basically Fire Emblem, but with a more straight-laced medieval aesthetic. I wasn't quite sure what to make of this one at first, but it really clearly sets the tone for the game by opening with some big, high production value cutscenes that sell the game's commitment to storytelling. There's a lot of things that make Fire Emblem successful, and perhaps the biggest one is its commitment to a sprawling military saga populated with strong, memorable characters. You get the sense that Lost Eidolons is trying to do the same thing here, as every cutscene, dialogue sequence, and battle is fully voice acted. This is a self-published title from a newly formed Ocean Drive studio, and I really wonder where they got the money for all of this, because this was the most premium feeling indie game in the entire Next Fest showcase. Does it all come together? I think it's too early to say yet, because I'm sure this is going to be a lengthy experience, But I enjoyed the combat, I liked the presentation, the voice acting was solid, and I'm just interested to see a fresh take on the Fire Emblem formula. I'm not 100% sold on this one like I am many of the other demos, but my interest has certainly been piqued, not least of all because of how ambitious this thing looks. We won't have to wait too much longer to have our questions answered, mind you, as Lost Eidolons is locked in for a Q3 2022 release. Okay, I love this next one so much. Roll it, Austin. Even though there's a lot of credit card swiping going on in this video, it's not Diablo Immortal, hey. This is Melatonin, and it was also in my top 5 best stuff I played during this next fest. I feel like there isn't a huge amount I can say to sell you on this, because once you see it, you get it, and you want to play it. Look, it's out on September 16th, it's awesome, I loved it. I'm just gonna shut up and let you listen to some more of it, because every track is just a bop. While we're on the topic of rhythm games, can I interest you in something a little louder? Now, full disclosure, I did not play this one during the Steam Next Fest. I actually got access to this demo a few weeks back, and I played the ever-living shit out of it. You can complete this demo in like 10 minutes, and I think I spent a total of 4 hours just playing it over and over again, trying to max out my score and go up the leaderboards, and oh, it was so good. This is Metal Hellsinger from a newly formed studio by the name of The Outsiders. Now, it's not actually an indie, because it's being published by Funcom, but it is a small team, it's their first game, so I don't think we should get too caught up in the definitions. Plus, I love it, so I'm going to talk about it no matter what. Metal Hellsinger is a rhythm-based first-person shooter, which naturally invites comparisons to BPM, another game I absolutely loved. Metal Hellsinger is very, very different though. BPM was a roguelike. This is not. BPM's levels were procedurally generated. These aren't. BPM didn't let you do anything off the beat. This does. BPM looked terrible. This looks good. I'm not saying this is better than BPM, by the way, because both titles have their own strengths and weaknesses. I'm just saying they're really, really different. So that shorthand like, oh, this is just BPM 2, right? That's not at all correct. Did I mention that this has all new music created specifically for the game, including a track from Serge Tankian of System of a Down? I spoke to the combat designer for this game when I was in LA last week, and he was like getting all emotional about having Serge involved, for real. This is going to be super cool. I'm counting the days until this one is out. We don't have to wait too long. September 15th for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. A little while back, we all got our first look at Midnight Fight Express, and we were all like, I want to go to there. A gritty, isometric brawler channeling strong John Wick energy with a dirgy soundtrack to boot. Hell yeah, man, sign me up. Trailers can be deceiving though, so it was a bit of a relief this week when I got my hands on the demo and I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely good. I'm sure we can expect to see many comparisons to stuff like Sifu for this one, but it's much closer to Hotline Miami than it is Sifu. Its combat is less about precision inputs and combos, and more about positioning, situational awareness, use of the environment, and flow. Sifu is about precision, whereas Midnight Fight Express is just a brawl and things are supposed to get very messy. I like this. It's simple, but it has just enough depth within its combat, environment, and enemy design to feel engaging and rewarding. Similarly, its visuals are simple, but there's just enough life breathed into each space to keep me interested. The music is cool, the whole package just works. I'm not expecting this to be one of the best games I played this year, but I absolutely plan to boot this up on my Steam Deck and spend a few hours just vegging out on my couch and kicking the shit out of goons. I'm down for that, and if you are too, then Midnight Fight Express hits August 23rd for all platforms. I cruise game dev Twitter quite a bit, and sometimes I'll see a brief gif of some gameplay and I'll be like, Excuse me? What the fuck is that? It was on one such occurrence that I discovered Moonscars from developer Black Mermaid. It's the 2D platforming action game that is fairly ubiquitous across the indie space, but it immediately stands out for its arresting art style and its top-tier animations. That was what really sold me, in fact, the animations. The way that giant sword swings from one side to the other, the way the main character labors to wield it, the force it creates when it connects, knocking enemies off ledges or back into environmental hazards. What I would learn when playing the demo is that the sword wasn't the only weapon on offer. There are a bunch of others, and each of them have animations and movesets just as deep and as satisfying. There's a whole bunch of progression systems there that further expand your capabilities, and some really novel gameplay ideas, like the need to hunt down doppelgangers of yourself in order to reclaim power that you've lost. This is channeling some Dark Souls, some Blasphemous, some Hollow Knight, and some Berserk, and it's all clicking together super well. Big hopes for this one. It's out sometime this year. Like Moon Souls, there were quite a few 2D action platformers on show during this Next Fest, but I think this one was the most mechanically sound. This is 9 Souls from developer Red Candle Games. You might remember these guys because of the hubbub relating to their previous game, Devotion, which had a Winnie the Pooh Easter egg in it mocking the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. That game is still not available on Steam as a result of that, mind you, so 9 Souls represents Red Candle's return to the platform, and it's looking to be a strong return indeed. 9 Souls begins with you unmasking yourself as an undercover operative aiming to bring down the powers you feigned loyalty for years. Your adopted brother is to be sacrificed in a very, very violent ceremony, but before that happens, you strike, revealing your true self and beginning the final phase of your insurrectionary mission. One of the pillars of 9 Souls' appeal is its setting, which skillfully merges Eastern architecture, spirituality, and martial arts with a sci-fi cybernetic motif. Think samurai robots and you're basically there. It looks awesome though, beautifully drawn and with great color. There's so much visual clarity when enemies attack, making it easier to dodge or parry. Parrying them opens up to this awesome attack where you dash past them and attach this token thing, I don't know what it's called, but if you keep holding the button, it'll detonate behind you, dealing huge damage and making you feel like a total badass. 9 Souls was certainly one of the darlings of this Next Fest. It was on every list and in every thread, and for good reason. It definitely deserves to be there. This is looking great. This one's hitting Q2 2023. So, if you like Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing, you're pretty well served by the indie space. This Next Fest did showcase a whole bunch of this type of game, but I'm shouting out 2 today, and this is the first one, Potion Permit. The premise for this is that you are a chemist newly arrived in town, and you get dumped in a rundown shack that needs a lot of renovation, and you get those renovations done by helping people around town. How can you help them? Well, by plying your trade, really. Mixing alchemical concoctions to either heal the sick or to help people with their work. The healing part is kind of cool, since you have to diagnose your patient with this little mini-game thing, and you can be like, cool, you've definitely got bonus eruptus, let's go get you some meds. And at that point, you have to head out into the wilds to hunt down the right ingredients, which can then be combined back at your cauldron in this really clever block puzzle style minigame. The game has a dynamic day-night cycle, and villagers all have their own routines that you need to learn. Outside of the demo, you can expect stuff like a farm and a market and other town stuff that lets you sink deep into the fantasy of being a valued member of this little community. I enjoyed this a lot. It was cute, it was wholesome, it had a nice premise, and I think people who are into this style of game are going to enjoy this one. It's called Potion Permit, and it's out on September 22nd. Alright, here comes the second deck builder of the video, and this one is very, very good. Meet Power Chord from developer Big Blue Bubble. Yes, it's a roguelike deck builder, but it's going all in on its rock opera premise, and it's absolutely sticking the landing. The forces of hell are doing their typical hellish business, and only this band of rock heroes can save the day. You control a band of 4, each of whom play a very different role. The lead guitarist is your damage dealer, as he has a stacking buff that amps his damage each round. You've got a backup singer who buffs and heals allies. You've got a bassist who applies stacking debuffs to targets. And on percussion is your shield bro, throwing out barriers to allies and tanking damage whenever he can. Just as complex as your classes are is the enemy variety. I mean, just in the demo alone, I encountered at least 10 enemy types, maybe more. and each of them had unique kits that necessitated a strategic response from me. At the start of the demo, I had worried that this was all sizzle, no sausage. Like, the game looked really nice and had a cool conceit, but it wasn't very deep or challenging. By the end of the demo, I was totally on board, as the classes, the enemy types, and the huge range of cards created a very rich, deep, strategic experience that always felt fun because it never took itself too seriously. Power Chord was the best deck builder I played in this next fest, and I played a bunch. If you're into this subgenre, then I do recommend checking this out. No release date for this one yet. Alright, so this next one, I think it was probably the best thing I played this next fest. Yeah, it definitely was. Selaco started its life many years ago as a GZ Doom mod, and I'm not sure what happened, but at some point the developer was like, hey, we should sell this. And yeah, they should, because this is fucking awesome, and they deserve to get paid for making something that hits this high quality bar. I do feel like the first time you look at this, you'll be like, oh yeah, it's a boomer shooter, I guess. It looks kind of nice. Next. But there are so many tiny details here that you don't notice until you spend some time playing it for yourself. Like, for example, the game runs at a really smooth, uncapped frame rate, but your weapon reload animation is capped at like 5 frames or something to remind you that you're playing something old school inspired. The level of destructibility in these environments is absurd. I mean, most games wouldn't try pulling this off at all, let alone something running in GZ Doom. It feels like everything you shoot buckles or pops under your bullets, and stuff like fire extinguishers or electrical boxes create opportunities for you to blindside or stun your foes. The whole thing looks so good, like if you made a cartoon version of RoboCop or something. Such a distinct 1980s neon sci-fi vibe going on. Gunplay is top tier, every weapon has so much feedback, sounds excellent. Plus, weapons are fully moddable because this game just seems to have no limits and it wants to do everything all at once, and it's actually doing it. Like I said earlier, AAA studios don't make these sorts of linear single-player shooters anymore, and Selaco kind of makes that feel a little bit okay, because if we get stuff as good as this from the indie scene, then we kind of don't need the AAA players to do their thing. Though to be fair, a new Fear or Titanfall game certainly would be appreciated. If the launch product is as good as this demo is, then this is likely to be on plenty of Game of the Year lists when it drops. The planned release date on Steam? 22/55, so sometime around the same time as Fallout 5. Seriously though, we have no idea when the release date is, but hopefully it's soon. The fixed perspective tank control era of survival horror games is long behind us, with remakes of Resident Evil games embracing the third-person over-the-shoulder camera pioneered by Resident Evil 4. This classic fixed perspective deserves to live on somewhere though, and it's doing so here in Signalis. Signalis' brief demo had perhaps the most confidence of any demo that I played during this next fest. It knows exactly what it was doing, and every camera angle, every enemy type, every combat mechanic, and every puzzle folded into the recreation of those classic horror experiences. The puzzles and menus in particular sell this, with limited inventory space, the ability to examine and rotate objects you pick up, and a variety of logic-based minigames that would feel right at home in Raccoon City. This isn't just old school survival horror homage, by the way. It feels like the developers, Rose Engine, knew that the kind of person who was going to be interested in this is probably a little bit older, has been around the block a few times. Signalis drops the schlocky B-grade horror that defined those PS1 era classics and replaces it with a moody, broody, almost art house ambience that makes the whole thing feel more adult. Like, you never have to think about what a Resident Evil game is trying to say, but you're already thinking about that stuff after just a few minutes with Signalis. This is looking absolutely superb. It's right near the top of my watch list. It's out on October 27th. Alright, how's this for a premise? Stardew Valley meets Spirited Away. I know, right? Shut up and take my money. This is Spirittea, and it's an absolutely charming slice of life game set in a small Japanese village. They got themselves a 7-Eleven, a karaoke bar, some tea fields, and a mythical bathhouse that spirits visit to de-stress after a hard day of being spirits, I guess. The thing is, the bathhouse has fallen into disrepair as the former manager disappeared mysteriously, and for whatever reason, you, the newly arrived person in town, are the only person who can see the spirits and the only person who can get the bathhouse back into shape. Functionally, the game feels just as influenced by the likes of Overcooked as it does Stardew Valley. Yeah, you walk around town and collect resources and help solve people's problems, but you also need to keep the actual bathhouse up and running. That means chopping firewood and feeding it to the boiler, collecting dirty towels, washing them, drying them, and handing them back to newly arrived guests, escorting those guests to a spot in the bathhouse and making sure they aren't sitting too close to a spirit they don't gel with. Later on, as more parts of the bathhouse open up, you can expect even more services, like a restaurant, each with their own minigame, and you can hire people, so you start playing more of a managerial role as the whole operation continues to scale up. This was delightful, I won't lie. Having something so thematically linked to Spirited Away did help, but even without that connection, this was just a really nice, clever, pleasant game that gets you settled into a relaxed groove and makes you smile. It's from Cheesemaster Games, no release date for this one, sadly.
Hello. Finally got them.
To my great shame, I will admit that I have not played System Shock. I'm not sure why I missed it, because I was playing PC games back then, but for whatever reason, yeah, I missed it. And I've long been looking forward to the remake from developer Night Dive Studios. This one has been in development for a long ass time, and kinda got soft rebooted back in 2018 since the team decided that their efforts to make the game feel contemporary were perhaps going a little too far, and they were changing too much from the original. That led them to go back and redraw their plans, focusing on retaining as much as they could while decluttering so much that makes the original difficult to play today. I found this to be such a fascinating demo to play through because on the surface it looks like a modern game with impressive 3D environments and immersive lighting and contemporary feeling gunplay, but the whole thing plays so differently in terms of level layout and puzzle logic and enemy placement. It's clearly made using a totally different design language than the one we've arrived at over nearly 30 years of game design. It's so weird and counterintuitive, but in a fascinating way that forces you to reflect on the fact that this game was a true breakthrough, pioneering achievement in game design when it debuted back in 1994. In this way, the remake is basically a time capsule that allows us to peer back into how games used to be made, without having to suffer through many of the frustrations, limitations, and compromises that older games typically impose. Will this be fun? I don't know yet, but I'm gonna learn something when I play through it, and I'm keen to go through that journey since System Shock deserves that sort of acknowledgement and revisiting. There's no release date for this one yet, but the studio has recently said the game is pretty much done, so I'm sure we can expect it sooner rather than later.
The wasteland is a desolate place, devoid of life, until the first turbine is constructed.
Another quick shout out here for completeness sake is Terra Nil. Like Gloomwood, I played and covered that last year in a previous Next Fest, but the demo was again available during this most recent showcase, and yeah, it remained one of the darlings of the show, one of the most downloaded, one of the most wishlisted, and one of the most talked about demos for the entire festival. Terra Nil describes itself as a reverse city builder, where instead of conquering nature and building concrete jungle atop it, your goal is to revivify natural biomes, planting trees, building waterways, fostering swampland and pollen plumes, and even forest burns, harvesting the destructive but rejuvenating power of fire. It's not a management game where resources need to be accumulated and spent. It's a puzzle game where the goal is to hit different thresholds of biodiversity, and you need to add a little bit here and take a little bit off there to get just the right balance. It's from developer Free Lives, it's being published by Devolver Digital, and there's no release date yet, but it can't be long because this thing was playable in June of last year and it already felt really polished, so it's gotta be soon. Now, to be clear, this list has been in alphabetical order, and so it is by chance alone that I have saved one of the best for last. This is Trepang Squared, and it comes from Trepang Studio. I don't know what the fuck these people were doing before this, but you don't get to make a game that looks this good, plays this well, and sounds this good on your first go around. For real, within 5 minutes of playing it, I was like alt-tab, like who are these people? What have they made before? What is the deal? I didn't find any answers to any of those questions, but I'm sure the CVs of these developers will become a matter of public record soon as more and more people play the game they're building for us. It just ticks so many boxes. I mean, obviously it's very fear-inspired with its lighting, its use of shadow, the fact that you're being hunted by trained military operatives. Similarities to Fear aren't just aesthetic though. Fear is famous for its AI that many people say has not been surpassed since. Trepang is very aware of that legacy, and it's doing a lot to meet it. It's been a long time since I've encountered enemy AI that felt this coordinated as they hunted me, flushed me out of tight spots and set up for flanks. I felt so pressured the entire time I was playing, and that felt so good. To even the scales, I have a whole bunch of cool shit at my disposal, like the ability to go invisible for a short span of time, or the ability to slow down time a la Max Payne, and that never stops feeling awesome. The crown jewel here is the gunplay. Man, like every animation, every bit of feedback, the responsiveness of the enemies as they ragdoll after eating a shotgun blast to the face, all of it was so on point. And don't even get me started on the sound design, where I was able to like hear the individual magazine drop on the floor behind me after I reloaded my pistol. Every sound just rings out so clearly, and this is one of those games that you play with your ears just as much as with your eyes. I don't know what the final product ends up looking like, but if you can take these fundamentals and pour them into a tight, focused, linear shooter with some good encounter design, you are well on your way to a fantastic debut title. It's called Trepang Squared, and it's out sometime this year. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been the Steam Next Fest for June 2022. Did you follow the rules? If you saw something that you thought was cool, did you go and wishlist it on Steam? If not, you may want to circle back and do that. Not only because it helps the devs out, but also, selfishly, it's good for you, since you'll get a handy reminder from Steam when the title is live, or when it goes on sale if you'd like to buy it later at a discount. I have the Rona right now, which is why my voice is a little how's it going, but I'm feeling better now that I've got this video out, since these are some of my favorite videos to make. A big thank you to my editor Austin for his work on this one, because 25 games makes for a chunky edit, and he always nails it. If we helped you find anything useful, then maybe hit the like button on the video, we'd appreciate that. Maybe hit the subscribe button for more indie coverage. I do that every single week as part of my This Week in Video Games news show. And if you're feeling particularly generous, then consider hitting the notification bell so I can hassle you the next time I upload. Thank you for making it this far, I appreciate your time as always, and thank you to this video's sponsor, Surfshark. You ever lose your wallet with all your credit cards in it and then you have to cancel all those cards because who knows who'll find that wallet and what they'll do with it, right? Well, guess what? Your cards are probably all over the internet right now. Not the physical cards, mind you, just the numbers. But that's all hackers need to be able to start skimming money from you in ways you might not even notice for months. In 2022, we can't just trust every website we're shopping on to keep our data safe. We need to take our own steps to protect our own data, otherwise these sorts of hacks and scams are basically inevitable. Surfshark VPN is the best means of protecting your online data. Your passwords, your IP address, your personal information. Surfshark VPN encrypts your online data, protecting you from identity thefts and hacks, and their clean web feature automatically blocks over 1 million known malicious websites, phishing methods, and other threats. You know those chains you can get that stop pickpockets from stealing your wallet? Surfshark is like that, but for your internet wallet. Surfshark means you can browse and shop online with confidence. You can use Surfshark on multiple devices at once, which is something that almost no other VPN allows. It's available on pretty much every platform you can think of. It has 24/7 customer support, and it has a full 30-day money-back guarantee. Best of all, they're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, giving you a massive 83% discount and 3 months free when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Click the link in the description below or visit surfshark.deals/skillup. Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.